when I heard my daughter say, "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house." Something inside me froze, like the ocean had stopped mid-wave. I remember standing in the kitchen, the morning sunlight spilling across the tile floor, the smell of coffee hanging in the air. I had just poured myself a cup, the steam curling up like a little promise of warmth when she said it. Her voice was calm, casual even, but the words hit me like a stone thrown into a pond, ripples of disbelief spreading through me. "Sold it?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. My hand trembled slightly as I set down the cup. You what?" She shrugged, her eyes avoiding mine. "I mean, it was getting old. Taxes, maintenance. It just doesn't make sense to keep it. We can use the money for the new house." I blinked at her, trying to digest it. The beach house had been ours for nearly 30 years. It was more than just a building on sand. It was every summer barbecue, every late-night bonfire, every holiday spent with friends and family. My husband, God rest his soul, had built the fire pit himself. The sound of the waves against the shore had always been a lullaby, the smell of salt and sunscreen a memory I could taste. And now she had sold it. Just like that. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something. But instead I swallowed hard and said, "You can't just sell something that's part of the family, part of me." My voice cracked, betraying the anger and the hurt I was trying so desperately to hide. She shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, I know it's hard, but we have to think practically. You can't live there anymore. It's too far, too empty." "Too empty?" I repeated, my hands curling into fists. "It was never empty. It was full of memories. Full of us." She didn't answer. She never did when I said something that made her uncomfortable. She had always been good at that, turning away, folding herself into silence. I could see the tension in her jaw, the tight set of her lips. I knew she had made this decision long before she told me, but she wanted to see my reaction first. I tried to steady my breath. "Who did you sell it to?" I asked finally, trying to keep my voice calm. Her eyes flicked down to the floor. "A couple from out of town. They're moving in next week." Something inside me recoiled. Out of town, strangers. The house that had held laughter, tears, first kisses, and last goodbyes, gone. And for what? Money? Convenience? I wanted to cry, but instead I felt a cold, hard knot of disbelief tighten in my chest. I leaned against the counter, staring at the tiles, the coffee growing cold in my hand. I thought about my husband, about the way he had smiled every summer as he painted the deck, about the nights we had sat on the porch, the sky a wash of pink and purple, and I felt a hollow ache. Selling the beach house was like selling a piece of him. "Mom?" Her voice pulled me back from the edge of my memory. She sounded nervous now, unsure. I thought you'd be okay with it." "Okay with it?" I echoed, my voice low. "Do you even hear yourself? You didn't even ask me." Her eyes filled with a flicker of something I hadn't seen in years. Fear, maybe guilt. I wanted to surprise you. I thought you'd be happy with the money, for the renovations or whatever you want to do. But it wasn't about money. It never had been. I wanted the house because it held our history, because every creaking floorboard and salty breeze whispered stories of the people we had loved, the people we had lost, and the life we had lived. It wasn't something you could replace with cash. I could feel my voice trembling. "Do you even realize what you've done?" I whispered. "This wasn't just a property, it was everything." She looked down, biting her lip, twisting a bracelet on her wrist. I thought you wouldn't miss it." "You're not going there anymore." "Not going there?" I repeated, disbelief turning to a quiet rage. "Do you think that because I don't live there, it doesn't matter? That because I'm older, I don't care about my memories?" Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she didn't look at me. She had done this before, made decisions for me thinking she knew what was best, without ever considering how it would feel. And yet, there was something in her hesitation that made me pause. I realized, slowly, that she hadn't told me yet the part that would make my heart twist even more. I didn't know it then, but this wasn't just a matter of selling a house. There was something else, something hidden, something I wasn't ready for that she hadn't said. Something that would make me question everything I thought I knew about my family, about trust, about love. The house wasn't just sold. The beach house wasn't mine anymore. I took a shaky breath and turned away, staring out the window at the street, at the neighbors going about their mornings. The sunlight seemed harsh, almost accusing. as if it could see right into my chest and expose the emptiness I felt. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg. I wanted to freeze time and take it back. But I knew some things once done couldn't be undone. I didn't know how long I stood there, lost in thought, before she finally spoke again. "Mom, we can go tomorrow and sort through everything. I'll help you pack if you want." I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice. The thought of stepping into that house one last time felt like stepping into a tomb of memories. And yet, I knew I had to go. I had to see it. I had to confront what had been done, and somehow find the strength to face whatever came next. As she left the room to make a call, probably to the buyers, I stood there in silence, listening to the ticking of the kitchen clock. Tick, tick, tick. Each second felt heavier than the last. I realized with a sinking feeling that the story was only beginning. The house was gone, yes, but what was hidden beneath her calm words, the decisions she had made without me, that was still waiting. And I could feel it, deep in my bones, that this hidden truth would change everything I thought I knew about my daughter and about myself. The smell of coffee had faded. The morning light had softened, but the weight in my chest hadn't lifted. It was the first real moment I had in a long time where I understood something stark and undeniable. Family can hurt you in ways no stranger ever could. And sometimes the people you love most are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. And with that realization, I knew tomorrow wouldn't just be about a house. It would be about uncovering the secrets my daughter had kept from me. About facing the truth I wasn't ready for. About surviving a heartbreak I hadn't yet imagined. I poured the cold coffee down the sink, my hands still shaking. And in the quiet that followed, I realized I couldn't run from this. Not anymore. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning, the house was silent, almost reverent, as if it knew something sacred had been taken from it. I walked through the front door and immediately felt the familiar creak under my feet. The smell of salt and old wood greeted me, but it was faint, almost fading. I ran my hand along the banister, remembering my husband's grip there, the way he would steady me when I tripped over the uneven step. My daughter followed behind, her steps careful, almost hesitant, like she feared the house might bite her for what she had done. I could feel her tension radiating off her like heat, and it made the pit in my stomach deepen. We moved through the living room, the old furniture still in place. Dust had settled in corners I hadn't noticed in years, but the memories were stronger than the dust. The couch where my grandchildren had tumbled over each other laughing. The armchair by the window where I had read letters from my husband during his last deployment. And now, someone else would sit there, oblivious to all of it. This is the last time I'll see it, I said softly, more to myself than to her. She nodded. I know, Mom, I know it's hard. I wanted to look at her, to see if there was any real remorse behind her words, but she avoided my eyes. She always did that when guilt was close. We began going through the rooms, opening closets, cabinets, drawers. Each item I touched carried a memory. My husband's old fishing tackle in the garage, my mother's faded china in the kitchen, my daughter's baby blanket still tucked in the linen closet. And each memory brought a quiet ache. It was in the master bedroom that I first noticed it. Her suitcase half-packed, but not for herself. For someone else. "Mom," she said, her voice smaller now, uncertain. I looked up and my heart stuttered. She wasn't talking about the house anymore. She was talking about something else, something she hadn't told me yet. I had a terrible premonition, one that curled in my stomach like smoke. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, though I could feel it trembling. She hesitated, twisting her fingers around the handle of the suitcase. I wanted to tell you before, but I didn't know how. I felt the knot in my chest tighten. There was more. Always more. She took a deep breath and finally said it in a voice so quiet I almost missed it. I didn't sell the house for us. I sold it for him. I froze. My mind stuttered, trying to understand. For him? For who? My voice was barely audible. My fiancé, she admitted. He wanted it. Said it would be perfect for his business. For his clients. I thought you'd be okay with it if I said it was for renovations. I didn't think it mattered that much to you. It was as if someone had thrown a bucket of ice water over my head. My daughter, the one I had raised with all my love, had betrayed me for a man I barely knew. My beach house, the place that had held my family's history for decades, was gone because of him, and she had lied to me about it. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake her until she understood the gravity of what she had done. But instead, I felt a cold, bitter ache, the kind that settles deep in your chest and doesn't leave. So, it wasn't about practicality, I said, my voice low, almost a whisper. It was about him, about his desires. She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing. But there's no excuse for taking something so sacred and destroying it for someone else's convenience. No excuse for lying, for hiding it, for selling a home that wasn't just bricks and wood, it was love, life, history. I turned away, walking to the window, staring out at the sand dunes that stretched like a golden ribbon to the sea. The waves crashed rhythmically, uncaring, relentless, just as life felt in that moment, relentless, harsh, indifferent. I could feel the weight of years pressing down on me, the realization that my daughter, the person I had trusted most, had chosen someone else's gain over my family's legacy. Mom? Her voice trembled now. Please. I thought you'd understand. I thought we could start fresh. We could... I shook my head. Fresh? Do you understand what you've done? You sold our memories. You sold the place where your father and I, where your family lived. You didn't just sell a house. You sold a piece of our hearts. She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled back. I needed space. I needed air. I needed to think. I wandered through the living room again, running my hands over the surfaces, touching the furniture, remembering the laughter, the tears, the quiet nights spent talking about nothing and everything. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. And yet, as much as I felt rage, I also felt something else, an understanding that I would have to navigate this carefully. This wasn't just about anger. This was about trust, about boundaries, about what happens when the people you love make decisions for you without your consent. And I knew in that moment that nothing would be the same between us. We spent the rest of the morning going through the house, packing what little I wanted to keep. Every object I picked up was heavy, weighted not with its physical presence but with memory. Every corner of that house reminded me of my husband, of the summers we had shared, of my daughter as a little girl running through the hallways with her tiny feet. And now all of it was gone, taken from me in a decision that had nothing to do with me. When the moving truck arrived, I stood on the porch, the wind whipping my hair across my face, and watched as strangers began to claim my past as their own. The smell of paint and sawdust would soon replace the salty tang of the sea. The laughter of new voices would fill the hallways, unaware of the history embedded in every floorboard. And yet, in that moment, I realized something crucial. This was more than just about a house. This was about the truth my daughter had hidden, about the way she had chosen someone else over me, over us. And I knew deep down that I would have to confront her, not just for the house, but for the betrayal itself. I didn't know how I would do it. I didn't know if I could forgive her. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. The days ahead would demand more than silence. They would demand truth. And I would get it, even if it broke me in the process. The drive home from the beach was quiet, heavy with unspoken words. My daughter kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, her fingers fidgeting with the steering wheel. I stared out the window at the passing trees, the sunlight slanting through the leaves in long, fractured patterns, and tried to steady my mind. My heart was a tangle of anger, grief, and disbelief, and I could feel the tension coiling tighter with every mile. When we finally reached our neighborhood, the familiar sight of our house should have been comforting. Instead, it felt foreign, as though I had been away too long, and the world had moved on without me. I stepped inside, and the smell of home, laundry detergent, old carpet, faint traces of vanilla air freshener wrapped around me, almost mocking in its familiarity. She followed, trailing behind like a shadow. I could feel her anxiety, the way she seemed to shrink under the weight of her own guilt. But I wasn't ready to look at her, not yet. I went straight to my study, the room that had always been mine, and sank into the chair behind the desk. The leather smelled faintly of polish and age. I ran my fingers across the surface, trying to anchor myself in something solid. I had loved that desk once. I had written letters, paid bills, planned vacations here. And now, after what she had done, I felt the floor shift beneath me in ways I couldn't describe. Finally, she spoke, voice tentative. Mom, I didn't mean for it to be like this. I looked up slowly, seeing the pleading in her eyes. But the truth is, pleading doesn't erase betrayal. Apologies don't mend broken trust. And she needed to understand that. Do you understand what you've done? I asked, my voice calm but edged with steel. Do you know what it feels like to have something so sacred taken from you without your consent? Something that held every memory of your family, your father, your childhood? Her lips quivered, but she nodded. I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't realize. Didn't realize? I echoed. You didn't realize that the house wasn't yours to sell? That memories aren't things you can just put a price tag on? She swallowed hard. I guess I didn't. I didn't think about it like that. I was thinking about the future, about us, about him. I could feel the betrayal cutting deeper, not just for the house, but for the fact that she had put someone else's desires above mine. I wanted to shout, to shake her until she understood the weight of her actions. But instead, I took a deep breath, trying to summon the clarity I needed. This isn't just about the house, I said slowly. It's about respect, about trust. You made a choice for me without me, and you did it for someone who isn't even part of this family. Her eyes filled with tears now, and she finally looked at me fully. I thought you'd understand. I thought I could make it up to you. I shook my head. Understanding isn't enough. Making it up isn't enough. You need to see what it feels like to hurt someone you love without realizing it. You need to understand that your choices have consequences. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. I could feel her trembling, and for a moment, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of pity. She hadn't done this out of malice. She had done it out of thoughtlessness, out of ignorance, out of misplaced loyalty. But that didn't make it any less painful. I need time, I said finally. Time to process this, to grieve what's lost, and to figure out if we can even move past it. Right now, I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I even want to. Her head bowed, tears falling freely now. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. I turned away, staring out the window at the neighborhood that felt both familiar and alien. The truth was, I didn't know what the future held. The bond between mother and daughter is complicated, layered with love, with expectations, with unspoken rules. And now that bond had been tested in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Over the next few days, I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She was quieter, more careful with her words, almost fearful of upsetting me further. Every time she came near, I could feel the weight of guilt pressing down on her. But I also began to notice something else. There were things she was still hiding. Small things, hesitations, glances that lingered too long. Messages on her phone she quickly closed when I entered the room. I didn't want to see it, but my instincts as a mother couldn't ignore it. Something was off. And I knew deep down that the beach house incident wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of uncovering a deeper truth. One evening, as I was organizing some papers in the study, I noticed an envelope sticking out from under a pile of mail. It had no return address, only her handwriting on the front. I hesitated before opening it, a premonition curling in my stomach. When I did, my heart stopped. Inside were documents I wasn't supposed to see, contracts, messages, and receipts that revealed not only the sale of the beach house, but also the involvement of someone I hadn't known had any access to our finances. And the realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about thoughtlessness. This was calculated. I felt my knees weaken, my hands trembling. The betrayal was deeper than I had imagined. I had trusted her, believed her, and she had made decisions that affected not only me, but our entire family's legacy, and had hidden the truth the whole time. And in that moment, I realized the first clue I had ignored. The small hints, the strange behavior, the tension in her voice, had all been pointing to something far more significant than just selling a house. I had missed it, blinded by my love and trust, and now I had to confront the reality that my daughter, the person I had nurtured and loved unconditionally, had secrets that could shatter everything. The next morning, I confronted her. I found her in the kitchen, staring blankly at a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. The sun streamed in, warm and golden, but it didn't reach the cold pit growing in my chest. I held the envelope in my hand like a weapon, the papers inside screaming the truth louder than any words ever could. Sit down, I said, my voice calm but firm. She flinched at the tone, like she had finally realized the depth of what was coming. She did as I said, hands folded tightly in her lap, fingers twisting nervously. I could see her trembling. For the first time, I felt a bitter satisfaction, not because I wanted to punish her, but because she could no longer hide. The truth would be unavoidable. I placed the envelope on the table. These I said slowly, letting each word sink in. Show more than the house. They show that you weren't just careless. You were deliberate. You hid things from me, things that affect not just me, but our entire family. Her lips parted, then closed. She didn't speak. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating. Why? I asked finally. Why hide this from me? Why involve someone else without telling me? She swallowed hard. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't just nervous. They were real, raw. Mom! I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought, if I handled it quietly, you wouldn't have to deal with it. But I would have dealt with it, I said, my voice low but shaking. I would have helped you figure it out. You didn't give me that chance. You chose to deceive me instead. Her head bowed. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me? I echoed incredulously. By taking what was mine? By putting someone else's desires above our family's memories? I could feel my pulse racing, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Do you understand what this does to trust? To a relationship? She nodded, tears streaming freely now. I do. I understand now. But understanding didn't change the fact that the damage was done. The beach house was gone. The secret dealings were done. And the reality was, our relationship would never be the same unless we faced it head on. I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath. You need to tell me everything, I said. Every detail, every reason, every choice you made. I can't move forward if there are shadows between us. And so she began, hesitating at first, then spilling the truth in fragments. There had been more people involved than I imagined, more financial entanglements, more secrecy. Every sentence she spoke twisted the knife further, but at least it was out in the open. At least I could see the full picture now. By the time she finished, I felt a strange exhaustion, mental, emotional, and physical. The betrayal had been laid bare, raw and jagged. I wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse. But instead, I sat in silence, letting the words settle, letting the reality sink in. This, I said finally, my voice trembling, is more than just selling a house. This is a lesson. A harsh, painful lesson about trust, about honesty, about respecting the people who raised you, who loved you unconditionally. She nodded, biting her lip, trying to hold back sobs. I know, Mom, I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough, I said. It can't be. You need to understand that every action has consequences. And now we're going to deal with them together. But it won't be easy. And it may take a long time to rebuild what's been broken. Her eyes filled with determination, mixed with guilt. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll fix it. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just the girl who had betrayed me, but the woman I had raised. The same one who used to hold my hand when she was scared, who had once trusted me completely, who could still learn, still grow, still choose differently. I realized then that the first clue, the subtle signs I had ignored, the glances, the hesitation, the small lies, had been a warning. And the betrayal, though painful, was also a chance to teach her about responsibility, about integrity, about the weight of our choices. The day passed slowly, a haze of conversation, reflection, and tears. I asked questions, she answered honestly, and for the first time since the beach house incident, I felt a fragile thread of connection begin to form. It wasn't forgiveness yet, it wasn't even trust, but it was a start. And in that start, I saw the possibility of healing. That evening, I walked to the window and looked at the sky, painted with shades of orange and pink, the world moving on as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. Our world had changed, and I had a choice to let this break me completely or to use it to teach, to guide, to reclaim some measure of peace. I turned back to her, and she was sitting quietly, watching me, waiting for a signal, for some sign that I might forgive, that I might understand. I took a deep breath, and in that quiet moment, I realized something important. Betrayal doesn't have to end relationships. Sometimes it can start the journey toward truth, toward honesty, toward rebuilding something stronger than before. It wouldn't be fast. It wouldn't be easy, but it could be done. And I was willing to try. The following days felt like walking through a fog. Every morning, I woke up with the echo of her words, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me. But instead of lashing out, I focused on observing, on understanding, on seeing not just her mistakes, but the person she was beneath them. She tried, I could tell. She made small gestures, coffee left for me in the mornings, notes on my desk reminding me to take care of myself. Simple things that seemed almost insignificant but carried meaning. Each act was her way of saying, without words, that she recognized the harm she had caused. And yet, the shadow of the beach house lingered. I couldn't walk past the empty spot in my heart where it had been. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see the waves crashing against the shore, hear the laughter of summers past, smell the salt and sun. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was grief, a tangible, sharp grief that wouldn't let go. One afternoon, as I was sorting through old photographs, she approached me cautiously, holding a box of papers. "Mom, I found these in the attic," she said softly. "They're letters your father wrote when he was away. I thought maybe you'd want them." I took the box from her hands, feeling the weight of it, and sat down at the table. The letters smelled faintly of old paper and ink, a scent that brought tears to my eyes. I read through them, each word a reminder of the man I had loved, of the family we had built together. And as I read, I realized something profound. Life moves forward, but memories, real, living memories, stay with us. They can't be sold, stolen, or destroyed. When I looked up, she was still standing there, hands clasped nervously. "Mom," she said again, "I know I can't bring back the house. I know I can't erase what I did, but I want to make things right somehow." I studied her face, seeing the genuine remorse etched into her features. I wanted to be angry, to punish her, to make her understand the depth of the pain she had caused. But I also saw an opportunity, a chance to guide her, to teach her about responsibility, about trust, about the consequences of her actions. "Actions speak louder than words," I said slowly. "You can't undo the past, but you can shape the future. That's what matters now." She nodded, determination in her eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next week, we began the slow process of rebuilding. It wasn't about the house anymore. It was about us. We had long conversations, sometimes tearful, sometimes quiet, sitting across from each other at the kitchen table. She answered every question honestly, no matter how uncomfortable, and I listened. I didn't forgive her yet, not fully, but I was listening, and that was a start. One evening, I suggested we do something symbolic, a small ritual to mark the closure of this chapter. We drove to the edge of the coast, to the cliffs overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. I took her hand gently. "Look at this," I said softly. "The waves don't stop. They keep coming day after day, just like life. We can't undo what's been done, but we can keep moving forward. We can choose how to respond, how to heal, how to live." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I understand, Mom, I really do." I handed her a small jar of sand I had collected from the beach house property, a little piece of our past. "Take this," I said, not as a memory of what was lost, but as a reminder of what we carry forward. Memories, love, lessons learned. That's ours. That's untouchable. She held it close, and for the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. Not a complete healing, not a perfect reconciliation, but a beginning. The next morning, she came to me with an idea. "Mom, what if we start a new tradition? Something just for us? Something that reminds us of the house, but also something we can call our own?" I smiled faintly. "What did you have in mind?" She hesitated, then grinned. "A summer retreat. Not a house, not a property, but a place we choose together. Every year we go there, make new memories, and honor the old ones. The beach house may be gone, but our family doesn't have to be." I felt a warmth spread through me that I hadn't felt in weeks. I think that's a wonderful idea." And just like that, the tension that had been suffocating us began to lift. We laughed, tentative at first, then more freely. The weight of the betrayal was still there, but it was no longer the center of our relationship. We were finding a way back to each other, slowly, carefully, one step at a time. By the time evening came, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't immediate. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. But the act of confronting the truth, facing the pain, and choosing to move forward together, that is where healing begins. We returned home, the sky now a deep purple, the first stars beginning to twinkle. I watched her for a moment, this woman who had hurt me so deeply, and I saw not just the betrayal, but the love, the remorse, and the potential for growth. And I made a silent promise to myself, to her, and to the memory of the life we had shared, that I would do everything I could to guide her, to teach her, and to help us find our way back to each other. The days ahead would be challenging. There would be moments of doubt, moments when the past felt too heavy, moments when anger threatened to resurface. But I knew one thing with clarity. We could navigate this together. Because family isn't about perfection. It's about resilience, about understanding, about love strong enough to endure mistakes and betrayal. And in that moment, I felt the first stirrings of hope that, even after everything, we could be whole again. The days after the confrontation were quieter than I expected, but in a heavy, reflective kind of way. My daughter moved around the house with a careful grace, as if every step could trigger another misstep in our fragile relationship. And I watched her, not with suspicion anymore, but with measured observation. I wanted to see her grow from this, to understand what her actions had cost, and to gauge whether she truly grasped the weight of her betrayal. One afternoon, I found her in the study again, staring at the old family photo albums. She was touching the pictures softly, almost reverently, as if the memories held there could somehow heal the wounds between us. I didn't interrupt her. Instead, I sat in my chair across from her, listening to the quiet rustle of the pages, the occasional soft sigh escaping her lips. After a long moment, she finally spoke. "Mom, I think I understand something now. Selling the house wasn't just about money or convenience. It was about power, about control, and I gave away that control, that history, without thinking about what it meant to you." I nodded slowly. Yes, that's part of it. And the other part is understanding that trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. You can't just hand someone money or promises and expect them to forget. Her eyes brimmed with tears again. I know, I don't want you to forget. I want to earn back your trust, even if it takes years. I'll do whatever it takes. And in that moment, I realized that her remorse was genuine. She wasn't trying to placate me. She was taking responsibility. It didn't erase the betrayal, but it was a start. That evening, we took a walk in the neighborhood, a simple gesture to reconnect with the world outside the house that had held so many memories. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves, and the street was quiet, except for the occasional bark of a dog in the distance. As we walked side by side, I felt the first fragile threads of reconciliation begin to weave themselves between us. We talked about small things at first, books she had read, a funny encounter with a neighbor, plans for the week ahead. But slowly, the conversation turned deeper. She asked questions about my husband, about our summers at the beach house, about what it had meant to me. And I answered, honestly, letting the memories wash over both of us. The more I spoke, the more I realized that sharing these memories, reliving them together, was part of the healing process. By the time we returned home, the sun had dipped below the horizon, and the house felt warmer, less oppressive. She looked at me, a tentative hope in her eyes. "Mom, do you think we can really move past this?" I paused, considering. The betrayal was real, the hurt was real, and yet I could feel the beginnings of something stronger than anger or grief. "It will take time," I said finally. "But yes, we can. If we're honest, if we face the truth, and if we choose to rebuild together." She smiled, a small, genuine smile, and I felt a flicker of relief. Not everything was fixed, not yet, but at least we were on the same path. The next few weeks were about action as much as reflection. She helped me organize old belongings, digitize photographs, and even sort through letters from my husband. Each task, mundane on the surface, was symbolic, an act of restoring order, of reclaiming our shared history, of acknowledging what had been lost and committing to moving forward. One afternoon, as we were sorting through an old trunk of mementos, she found a set of seashells I had collected as a child. "Mom, these," she said, holding them up. "These remind me of the beach house. Maybe we can keep a little piece of it here, in our home." I took the shells from her, turning them over in my hand. The edges were worn, the colors faded, but they were beautiful in their imperfection. "Yes," I said softly. "We can keep these. A small reminder of what we've lost and what we still carry." And in that moment, I realized something important. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about integrating the past into the present, carrying the lessons learned, and choosing to grow despite the pain. My daughter's actions had hurt me deeply, yes, but they had also forced a confrontation that, in the end, could make us stronger, more honest, more aware of the value of trust. That evening, as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, we sat together on the porch, silent but comfortable. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain from earlier in the day. I watched her, this woman who had once betrayed me, and I felt a cautious optimism. We weren't fixed. We weren't perfect. But we were present, and that mattered more than anything. In the quiet, I thought about my husband and the summers at the beach house, and I understood something I hadn't before. The spaces we inhabit, the objects we cherish, the memories we hold dear. These things are fragile, yes, but they are also resilient. They live in us, in our hearts and minds, and no one can ever truly take them away. My daughter looked at me, sensing my thoughts, and said quietly, "Mom, thank you for giving me a chance to make this right." I smiled faintly. The chance isn't just yours, it's ours. We're both learning, and we both have to live with the consequences. She nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. I understand. And in that moment, I knew that while the beach house was gone, something else had emerged in its place. A deeper understanding between mother and daughter, forged in pain but tempered with the possibility of forgiveness and growth. We went inside as the night settled, the house quiet but no longer heavy. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in weeks, a fragile, tentative peace, but peace nonetheless. And I realized that sometimes the hardest trials bring the most profound lessons, and the deepest wounds can pave the way for healing if we are willing to face them honestly. The next morning, there was a shift in the air. Not dramatic, not sudden, but subtle, like the first hint of warmth after a long, cold night. My daughter moved with more ease, her gestures less cautious, her eyes more open. It wasn't complete forgiveness yet, but it was progress. And I realized that progress, no matter how small, is worth noticing. We spent the morning sorting through old family documents, bills, and letters, mundane yet strangely therapeutic. Each paper we touched, each envelope we opened, seemed to carry the echoes of the past, the history of our family. And as we worked, I noticed her changing, not just in her actions, but in her demeanor. There was a humility there now, a recognition of the weight of her choices. At lunchtime, I suggested we cook together, something simple. We chose a pasta recipe my husband used to love, something he had taught me decades ago. As we chopped vegetables and stirred sauce, I noticed how she listened, not just to instructions, but to the rhythm of our household, to the unspoken cues of cooperation. There was a quiet intimacy in the shared task, a reminder that relationships are repaired not only with words, but with actions. "Mom," she said suddenly, her voice soft, "I've been thinking maybe we can create a new tradition, something that doesn't replace the beach house, but honors it." I looked up, intrigued. "What did you have in mind?" She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "A summer trip every year, somewhere we choose together. It could be a cabin, a rental, even just a small cottage by the water. A place where we make new memories, but also remember the old ones. Something that belongs to us, and only us." I felt a warmth spread through me I hadn't felt in weeks. "That sounds perfect," I said. "It's not the house, but it's ours. And it can grow with us," she nodded eagerly. "I'll start looking into options. Something meaningful. Something that feels like home." As the day passed, I realized that the most important work wasn't in the papers or the recipes. It was in these small, intentional acts of rebuilding. We laughed over mistakes in the kitchen, reminisced over old photographs, and even shared stories about my husband that she had never heard. It was a slow but profound healing, each moment a stitch in the fabric of our renewed relationship. By evening, we were sitting on the porch again, the sky painted with deep blues and purples, the air carrying the faint scent of evening rain. My daughter turned to me, hesitant. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course," I said. Do you think we can really move past everything? I mean, not just the house, but me? All the choices I made that hurt you?" I considered her question, weighing it carefully. Moving past it doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't happen. But it does mean facing the truth together. It means learning, growing, and choosing differently next time. And yes, I think we can. But it will take time, patience, and honesty from both of us. She smiled, relief mingled with determination in her eyes. "I'll do my part. I promise." And I believed her. Not because promises erase mistakes, but because I could see her effort, her awareness, her willingness to change. That more than anything mattered. The following week, she surprised me with something small but meaningful. She had framed a photograph of the beach house, taken from a summer years ago, and placed it on the mantel. "For memory," she said softly, "to remind us where we've been." and what we carry forward. I ran my fingers over the frame, feeling the curve of the wood, the smooth glass, the weight of memory it carried. It was a simple act, yet it symbolized a deep recognition of the past, of respect for what had been lost, and a commitment to honor it moving forward. As I sat back in my chair, I realized that healing isn't linear. It's not neat or predictable. There are moments of doubt, of frustration, of resurfacing pain. But there are also moments of connection, of understanding, of love. And these moments, though small, are what make the difference. That evening, I found myself reflecting on the lessons I had learned over the past weeks. Betrayal is a bitter teacher, yes, but it also exposes truths we might otherwise ignore. It reveals weaknesses, assumptions, and gaps in communication. And it offers a choice, to let it destroy us, or to use it as a catalyst for growth, for honesty, for deeper connection. I turned to my daughter, who was quietly reading on the couch. She looked up and smiled, that small, tentative smile that had begun to reappear over the past days. "Mom, thank you," she said, "for giving me a chance, for seeing me even when I made mistakes." I reached out and placed a hand on hers. "The chance isn't just yours. It's ours. We're both learning, and we both have to live with the consequences. But I believe we can come out stronger." She nodded, squeezing my hand gently. And in that simple gesture, I felt a sense of closure. Not complete closure, not perfect reconciliation, but a bridge being rebuilt, stone by stone, hand in hand. As the night deepened, I walked to the window and gazed at the stars. The world outside was vast, unchanged by our small private struggles. But within our home, something profound had shifted. Trust, broken and fragile, was beginning to mend. Love, tested and strained, was finding its way back. And I understood finally that family isn't about perfection. It's about endurance, about commitment, about the willingness to face the hardest truths together. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a lightness in my chest, a quiet hope that we could navigate the challenges ahead. The beach house may have been lost, but in its place, something far more enduring had emerged. Understanding, honesty, and a tentative, precious reconnection between mother and daughter. Over the next few days, our interactions settled into a new rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. She had stopped flinching at my presence, and I had stopped bracing for deceit. The air between us, once thick with unspoken anger and disappointment, was beginning to feel breathable again. It was tentative, like the first fragile shoots of spring pushing through frozen ground, but it was there. One morning, I woke to the smell of toast and coffee drifting from the kitchen. I followed it, expecting an awkward silence, a hesitant apology. Instead, I found her humming softly, a song my husband used to sing when the mornings felt heavy. She had made breakfast for both of us, set the table neatly, and poured the coffee just the way I liked it. "Good morning," she said, smiling as I approached. "Good morning," I replied, touched by the small, deliberate act. "Thank you," she shrugged, a faint blush on her cheeks. I want to try. Little things, maybe. To show I'm trying," I nodded. It wasn't grand gestures that mattered, not yet. It was the small, consistent efforts, the quiet accountability. That morning, as we ate together in companionable silence, I realized that trust begins in the mundane, the daily routines, the little moments where character is revealed, where sincerity can't hide behind words alone. After breakfast, she suggested we start planning our first new family tradition trip. I hesitated initially. The idea of moving forward so soon felt almost impossible, but she had thought it through. Her suggestions were thoughtful, grounded, and considerate. It was clear she had reflected deeply on the past and what it meant to repair what had been broken. We sat at the dining table with maps, brochures, and a notebook, jotting down ideas for locations that could be meaningful, accessible, and serene. I watched her eyes light up as she imagined possibilities, not just for herself, but for us. There was a maturity there now, tempered by the lessons she had learned. "Mom," she said after a long pause, looking up at me, "I want this trip to be about us. About connection, about remembering the past, but also creating new memories. Not about replacing the beach house, but about honoring it." I felt my chest tighten. Her words weren't perfect, but they carried sincerity, and that counted for more than anything. "I think that's a beautiful idea," I said softly. We spent the afternoon gathering supplies, making plans, and discussing the little traditions we might carry forward. Morning walks, evening talks, shared journals, even a small ritual to honor the beach house memories. The day felt productive, almost sacred, as if we were laying down the foundation for a stronger relationship, brick by careful brick. Later, when the evening came, we sat on the porch again, wrapped in blankets, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The quiet was comfortable now, not heavy or oppressive. The air smelled faintly of autumn leaves and distant rain. I thought about the weeks that had passed. The confrontation, the arguments, the tears, the reflection. The betrayal had been raw, piercing, and undeniable. But in facing it, we had found a path forward, however tentative it was. "Mom," she said quietly, breaking the silence, "do you think I can ever fully earn back your trust?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Trust isn't a single thing you give or take. It's built over time with honesty, effort, and consistency. You've started that process, whether or not it will be fully restored. Only time will tell. But I believe in the possibility, because I see the effort, and I see the willingness to grow. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not just sorrow. They were hope, determination, and recognition of the responsibility she bore. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said. "I want to rebuild it. I want us to be okay." I reached out and placed my hand over hers. The gesture was simple, but it carried immense weight. "We will be okay," I said softly. "It won't be perfect and it won't be easy. But we'll be okay as long as we keep choosing honesty, respect, and care for each other and for the memories that matter." As the evening grew darker, I felt a profound sense of closure begin to settle, not total closure. Not a perfect resolution, but a quiet, tentative peace. The beach house was gone, yes, but in its absence, we had discovered something far more enduring: the ability to confront pain, to face betrayal, and to choose connection over resentment. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on the journey so far. Betrayal had a way of revealing the cracks we often ignore, the unspoken assumptions, the gaps in communication, the ways we take each other for granted. But it also revealed resilience, awareness, and the capacity for empathy. I realized that pain, though bitter, can be instructive. It can show us what we value most and what we must fight to preserve in our hearts and relationships. I thought about my daughter, her mistakes, her growth, and her determination to make amends. And I realized that love, when tested, is not destroyed, it transforms. It becomes wiser, more patient, and more capable of weathering storms. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to rest, to let go of the tight grip of grief and anger. I knew the journey ahead would still be challenging. There would be moments when memories of betrayal resurfaced, moments when trust wavered, moments when patience was tested. But I also knew that we had taken the first meaningful steps toward restoration. And in that realization, I found a hope that, though fragile, was stronger than the fear and hurt that had dominated the past weeks. A month passed, quietly but meaningfully. We had begun to settle into a life that felt new, yet familiar in its simplicity. There were still moments of tension, like small shadows passing over sunlight, but they didn't last long. We had both learned to talk instead of retreating into silence, to listen instead of defend. And that, I realized, was progress worth protecting. Our planned trip was approaching. My daughter had found a small coastal cabin for rent, a modest place with white wooden walls, a porch overlooking the sea, and large windows that let in the sound of waves. It wasn't the same beach house, of course, but the photographs reminded me of it in spirit. When she showed me the pictures, my heart skipped a beat. The ocean stretched endlessly behind it, and I could almost smell the salt, hear the gulls crying in the distance. For a moment, I felt both nostalgia and ache, like standing between past and present, watching both unfold in the same breath. She noticed my hesitation. "If you're not ready, we don't have to go," she said softly. I shook my head. "No," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's time." The drive there was long but calm. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was reflective, peaceful even. I watched her as she drove, noticing the determination in her expression, the way she gripped the steering wheel gently, as if guiding more than just the car, guiding us both towards something better. When we finally arrived, I stepped out and let the breeze hit my face. It was cool and salty, tinged with the faint scent of seaweed and pine from the nearby dunes. The sound of waves crashing against the shore was like an old lullaby, familiar, soothing, yet heavy with memories. The cabin itself was small but inviting. The porch creaked softly underfoot. The wind whispered through the open shutters, and the faint hum of distant boats filled the air. My daughter carried our bags inside, humming the same tune she'd been humming that morning weeks ago, when she'd made breakfast for me. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of cedarwood and sea air. There was a small fireplace, a cozy kitchen, and 2 simple bedrooms. Everything about it felt temporary but comforting, like a space meant for reflection, not permanence. That evening, we took a walk along the beach. The sand was cool beneath our feet, and the setting sun cast long golden lines across the water. My daughter picked up a small shell, brushed off the sand, and handed it to me. "For your collection," she said quietly. I took it smiling. "Thank you," I said, running my thumb over the smooth surface. "You know, your father used to do the same thing. Every time we walked here, he'd find a shell for me." She looked at me, her expression softening. "I remember," she said. "You kept them in a jar near the window. I used to think they were magic." We laughed lightly, and for the first time in months, it wasn't a forced sound. It was real, shared, genuine. The sea breeze tangled our hair, and the sound of the waves filled the spaces where words weren't needed. After a while, she stopped walking and turned to me. "Mom, I want to tell you something I haven't said out loud yet." I looked at her, the fading sunlight painting her face in gold. "Go on," I said gently. She took a deep breath. "When I sold the house, I thought I was being practical. I told myself it was just property, that you'd understand one day. But deep down, I think I was angry too. Angry that I never had the same connection to it that you did. Angry that I always felt like a guest in that house, never its keeper. It was stupid and selfish, but at the time, I didn't even realize how much of that anger was just hurt." I felt the words sink in slowly. Her honesty was raw, disarming. "Hurt?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "You always spoke of that house as your sanctuary. I wanted to be part of that, but I never felt like I belonged there. It was your past, your memories, your husband's shadow everywhere. I think selling it was my way of trying to make space for myself. But I didn't see what I was taking from you in the process." Her voice broke slightly at the end, and I felt tears prick my own eyes. For so long I had seen her act as betrayal, pure and simple. But now I saw something more complicated, a daughter trying to define herself, struggling under the weight of legacy and longing. I reached out and touched her shoulder gently. "You didn't have to erase my past to make your own," I said softly. "There was room for both." She nodded, tears falling freely now. "I see that now. I wish I had seen it then." We stood there for a long time, the waves rushing in and pulling back, the tide whispering its endless rhythm. It felt like the ocean itself was listening, absorbing our pain, offering quiet absolution. When we finally turned back toward the cabin, the sky had turned a deep indigo, the first stars flickering faintly above the horizon. We walked in silence, but it was a different silence now, heavier, yet somehow cleansing. Inside, she lit a small fire. We sat on the rug, the warmth wrapping around us as the flames danced. "I've been reading about forgiveness," she said suddenly, her eyes on the fire. "It said that forgiveness doesn't mean letting go of the hurt. It means choosing not to live inside it forever." I smiled faintly. "That sounds right." She looked at me, searching my face. "Do you think you can do that in for me?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "Yes," I said finally, "because I already started the moment you told me the truth." She exhaled shakily, as if she'd been holding that breath for months. And in that moment, I knew something within both of us had shifted for good. Outside, the sea kept whispering. The stars reflected in the dark water like tiny candles. The world was quiet, peaceful, and for the first time, I didn't feel the ache of loss when I thought of the beach house. I felt gratitude for the memories it gave me, for the lessons that followed, and for the daughter beside me who was learning, like me, how to start again. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the waves was steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat I hadn't heard in years. I lay awake, staring at the wooden ceiling, thinking about how life had unfolded, not perfectly, not kindly, but truthfully. There are things you lose that never come back: houses, people, trust. But sometimes, what replaces them isn't worse, it's just quieter, simpler. Like a soft breath after a long cry. I got up quietly so I wouldn't wake her and stepped outside. The night air was cool, almost sharp. The ocean shimmered under the moonlight, a sheet of silver that stretched into forever. I walked down to the water's edge, the sand cool and damp beneath my feet, and I let the waves roll over my toes. For the first time in years, I didn't cry when I looked at the sea. Instead, I smiled. I whispered a small prayer, not one asking for anything, but one of thanks. For endurance, for understanding, for the kind of peace that doesn't come from getting everything back, but from finally accepting that you don't need to. Behind me, I heard the soft creak of the cabin door. My daughter stepped out, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "You're up early," she said softly. I turned and smiled. Couldn't sleep. The sea has a way of keeping old souls awake. She walked up beside me, her bare feet sinking slightly into the sand. We stood there in silence, watching the horizon begin to glow faintly with the first light of dawn. "I used to think forgiveness was something you give once," I said quietly. "Like crossing something off a list. But now I think it's something you keep choosing, over and over, until it stops hurting." She nodded, her eyes on the water. "And does it stop?" I looked at her, the faint sunrise coloring her face in soft pink light. "It does," I said, "when you finally understand why it happened. Not to break you, but to change you." A long pause hung between us, filled only by the sea breeze and the distant call of a gull. Then she reached out and took my hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you," she said simply. I smiled faintly. "For what?" "For still being here," she replied. "For not walking away." I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the little girl I used to hold anymore. She was a woman now, flawed, frightened, but brave enough to face what she'd done. And I realized then that the real test of motherhood isn't protecting your children from pain. It's teaching them how to rise after they've caused it. When the sun finally broke over the horizon, the light poured over us in golden waves. It was warm, cleansing, almost sacred. I felt like the world had hit reset. We spent that day walking through nearby towns, sharing memories, eating seafood from a small roadside cafe, laughing at things we hadn't laughed about in years. Every hour seemed to peel away a layer of distance that had built up between us. That evening, as the sun began to set again, we sat on the porch. She had brought out a small wooden box from her bag. "I brought something," she said shyly. Inside were photos, old ones, some yellowed and curled at the edges. Pictures of our old house, my late husband, birthdays, summers, winters, all frozen fragments of the life we once had. I picked up one of me and him standing by the old fig tree in our yard, my hair tied up, his arm around my shoulder. I laughed softly. "We looked so young." "You looked happy," she said. "I was," I whispered. "And you know what? I still am. Not the same way, but I am." She smiled and reached into the box again. "There's something else," she said. She pulled out a folded paper, a deed. My breath caught for a moment, my chest tightening. "It's not the old house," she said quickly, seeing my expression. "But I found a small piece of land nearby. I wanted to build something new. Maybe not a replica, just a place that feels like home. For both of us." For a second, I couldn't speak. My heart swelled and ached all at once. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she interrupted gently. "Not to fix what I broke. I know I can't. But maybe to plant something new where the old roots still remember us." I looked at her, and the tears came freely this time. Not from pain, but from something deeper. Healing. I reached out and took her face in my hands. "You've grown," I whispered. "And so have I." She smiled through her own tears. "Then maybe we both made it." That night, as we sat by the fire again, I told her stories, ones I'd never shared before. About how scared I was after her father died, how the house became my only anchor, how I used to talk to its walls when no one was home. She listened, eyes shining, nodding silently. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't carrying those stories alone anymore. Before we went to bed, she said, "Mom?" "Yes?" Do you think people ever stop making mistakes? I laughed softly. No, but if we're lucky, we start making better ones. She smiled and nodded, the firelight flickering across her face. When I finally went to sleep, I dreamed of waves again. Only this time, they weren't pulling things away, they were bringing them back. Not the house, not the past, but something more precious, peace. And as the morning came once more, the sunlight filling the small cabin, I realized something simple but powerful. Forgiveness doesn't rebuild what was lost. It builds what can still be found. The house I'd lost would always be part of me. But so would this moment, this quiet, this love that had learned to survive its own breaking. I looked over at my daughter sleeping peacefully on the couch, her hair tangled, her hand resting over her heart. And I whispered to the morning light, maybe this is what home was meant to be all along.